So, Boruto's time skip design just got released, or maybe leaked, and it looks perfect. Boruto's design is absolutely incredible. He's got 2 belts, he's got a matching bracelet, he has Sasuke's cloak and sword, he's got a scar over one of his eyes. His hair design is incredible. He's aged up in an incredible way. Genuinely, he shifted from the boy who said, "I'll have your daughter back by 9, sir," to the man who said, "I'll have her back whenever I want." He looks sick. And this is obviously off the heels of Sarada's time skip design being leaked, and she also looks sick. But then again, considering the fact that the last chapter of Boruto came out on April 20th, 4 months prior to the release of the first chapter of the second part of Boruto, we would hope that character designs were nailed. I mean, what else have we been working on? But with the hype now being generated around Boruto and the first chapter of the time skip coming out, I figured that now is the perfect time to cover our bases, to talk about what we believe is coming up in this part 2 of Boruto. And as someone who's made a lot of videos speculating about what I believe the Boruto future is gonna be, I figured that today I should make a video compiling all of those ideas, giving you, the viewer, either a leak of what the plot of Boruto 2.0 is gonna be, or compiling all of my terrible theories to truly cement once and for all in one video that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But considering the amount of time and effort I put into each and every single one of these individual theories, I think it's gonna be a lot closer to me telling you what to expect. Because if there's anybody out there who understands Kishimoto and what he's gonna write outside of Kishimoto, it's probably me. And thus today, we're talking Boruto 2 Blue Vortex leaked? They might have nailed the character designs for both Boruto and Sarada, but they did not nail that name. Naruto Shippuden, incredible, rememberable, easy. Boruto 2 Blue who is that for? It's one of the weirdest follow-up names to an anime of all time. But before I get to spoiling the plot of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex for you guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of me possibly spoiling some of your other favorite anime, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. Or if you just like the idea of me spoiling anime in general, you're gonna love my podcast, Udaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. According to Danny, I actually do spoil things a lot. I don't think I do. So when I'm not filming informational videos, I do a lot of theories. And since Boruto chapter 80 was absolutely off the rails with things like Sarada awakening her MS and Boruto being forced to flee the village and Sasuke going with him, we were left with a ton of questions. And since there has been a 4-month gap between April 20th and August 20th when the new chapter of 2 Blue Vortex comes out, we've had a lot of time to theorize. Theorize about things like, what are Sarada's MS abilities? What has Boruto been up to during the time skip? Why does he have Sasuke's cloak and sword? What's Kawaki doing now that he's Naruto's son? Does Himawari think that Boruto killed Naruto? Who's Hokage now that Naruto's gone? And since we now know that Mitsuki was affected by Ada's brainwashing, that must mean that he's not no Tsutsuki, so who are Mitsuki's parents? And has Mitsuki perfected Sage Mode? Does he believe that Kawaki is his best friend? And so many other questions that we've had to sit on for months. And soon, and I mean very soon, we will have answers to all of those questions. However, I might actually be able to offer answers to some of those questions faster than the manga, because I haven't been wrong about any of my Boruto predictions up to this point, so why would I start now? So the way that we're gonna break down all of my Boruto predictions is that we're gonna go character by character and guess what they're gonna be up to, or what they did, or what happened to them, or what abilities they gained during the time skip. I feel like that's the best way to paint the large scale picture that will be the entire Boruto verse post-time skip. And genuinely, who better to start with than Boruto himself? See, Boruto and Kawaki are actually the only people that we've seen thus far post-time skip, and thus we can kind of make our best possible guesses about those two. What we know about Boruto is that after the time skip, he has access to the Jogan. We know this because in the first chapter of the manga, in the first episode of the anime, we see Boruto, while he's clashing with Kawaki, open his Jogan eye. And thus we know the slash that Boruto took to his eye actually didn't destroy his eye. Well, it might have destroyed his regular eye, and that might have acted as a catalyst for the Jogan to come into his eye full time, but we just don't know. All we know is that Boruto has an eyeball in his closed slashed eye, which allowed us to realize that after Boruto had his eye slashed and Momoshiki was talking about how he would lose everything, that Boruto wasn't going to lose everything because we already knew he kept that eye. But Momoshiki thought in the moment that his eye was slashed, he lost his Jogan, which gave us a pretty big hint into the undertones of Boruto and how it would be a redemption arc of Boruto not losing everything and actually clinging on to the things that matter most to him. him. And thus Boruto 2 Blue Vortex might actually be a story about Boruto triumphing over Momoshiki. But the context in which Boruto uses his Jogan in this clash against Kawaki is also interesting. See, in the beginning of the battle against Kawaki, Boruto has the eye closed, which is eerily reminiscent of the way that non-Uchihas use their Sharingans. Kakashi keeps his Sharingan covered with his headband, Danzo wears a bandage over it, because if you have that eye open as a non-native Sharingan user, you can't deactivate it, which causes a massive chakra drain. And therefore, I believe that Boruto's Jogan will work in a somewhat similar capacity. See, we've seen in the anime, and I think maybe in the manga a couple of times, Boruto accidentally tap into the power of the Jogan. I actually think it's only happened in the anime. But these moments when Boruto taps into the Jogan are fleeting. They don't last for long, and also they have varied effect every single time we see it happen. And considering the fact that all filler episodes in Boruto are actually anime canon, all of these moments when Boruto uses the Jogan are technically canon, and thus somewhat canon material is telling us that Boruto has the ability to tap into the Jogan, but not the ability to control it. However, control over the Jogan is what I believe that Boruto will have worked on during the time skip, because obviously, pre-time skip, no control over the Jogan, post-time skip, control over the Jogan. Seems like a pretty easy assessment to make. However, there's a bit more to this theory than the incredibly obvious. See, Boruto working on his Jogan during the time skip makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that Sasuke has now become a rogue ninja to protect Boruto. And considering the fact that the Jogan is referred to the pure eye, and that's led people to believe that the Jogan is actually the root of all dojutsu, and therefore that the Jogan technically has all of the abilities of all dojutsu we've seen, there'd really be nobody better to teach Boruto in the ways of using the Jogan than Sasuke. Because in the anime thus far, we've seen that the Jogan has the ability to track chakra, like the Byakugan. It also has the ability to sense movement and predict where somebody will move, like the Sharingan, and has the ability to open portals, like the Rinnegan. And thus we've had 3 separate instances where the Jogan is able to use abilities specific to other dojutsu. And since Sasuke was once the wielder of a 6-tome Rinnegan and an MS, he's pretty much the forefront of humans capable of using multiple dojutsu. See, because with the power of the 6-tome Rinnegan, Sasuke was able to do things like open portals and use Rinnegan abilities, while also still being able to use Sharingan abilities. And by awakening an MS, Sasuke has seen the multiple different kinds of abilities that a Sharingan can confer. And thus, with Sasuke having pretty much complete mastery over all things Rinnegan and Sharingan, he's pretty much the best possible person to try and teach Boruto how to use his Jogan, as the only other possible person in the entire universe with a Jogan is Shibai, and he's an extra-dimensional god who's abandoned a physical form, and also probably not a great guy. And thus the biggest change out of Boruto heading into the time skip will be his usage of the Jogan. But that's not all that will change about Boruto. As we all know, Boruto's natural chakra release is lightning, which is why he was able to passively add lightning to his Rasengan and create a vanishing Rasengan. And since Sasuke is also kind of the forefront of lightning release, I believe that heading into the time skip that Boruto's lightning release will be massively amped. Now, I don't think that Boruto's relationship with Momoshiki will have changed that much in the time skip. I believe that Momoshiki will still be looking for any and all opportunity to take over Boruto's body, since Boruto's body is now 100% Otsutsufied, and Momoshiki probably wants to use Boruto's body to defeat Kawaki, feed him to the 10 tails, and eat the god tree, or the chakra fruit of the god tree, you get it. However, there's also the possibility that Momoshiki has been up to something during the time skip. See, there's one thing that the Boruto fandom can't seem to get over, and it's that in every single piece of media that we see of Boruto after the time skip, he has 2 things: Sasuke's cloak and Sasuke's sword. While Boruto having Sasuke's headband is nothing new, he had his headband taken away by Naruto, and then he got Sasuke's headband, and then Naruto gave his headband back, but then Boruto gave his headband to Kawaki, so he took Sasuke's headband, and now he's got Sasuke's headband again. Boruto having Sasuke's blade and cloak is weird, because here's the thing: Sasuke hasn't worn his headband in years, so him throwing it to Boruto is really of no consequence. However, the real question that arises is, why wouldn't Sasuke want his cloak or his sword? Pretty much everything we've seen from Sasuke in the last and in Boruto is that he's heavily reliant on his sword. In his old age, he's probably become the greatest Kenjutsu user on Earth outside of Chojuro. In battles against Shin and Momoshiki and Ishiki and pretty much anybody that Sasuke has had to battle in either the last or Boruto, he's used his sword. Not to mention that Sasuke's cloak has also become an incredibly iconic part of his wardrobe. So why would Sasuke give those things to Boruto? Does Sasuke adopt a new fighting style, or is Sasuke incapacitated or teleported to another dimension, or just dead? Well, I tend to err closer to the latter. I believe that Sasuke post-time skip will either be incapacitated or dead, because genuinely I can't imagine a reasonable situation why Sasuke would give up his cloak and his sword to Boruto unless he didn't have to use them. On top of this, Sasuke's death brings along an incredibly important plot point for Sarada, as Sarada only has one other Uchiha on the entire planet who has a Sharingan, and more specifically an MS, whose eyes she could take and fuse with her own to awaken EMS. And thus, I actually tend to err closer to the side of Sasuke is dead than incapacitated. Though a lot of people will say there's a possibility that Sarada's eyes won't darken, because her MS was awoken through love and not hatred, which isn't a crazy theory. It's actually a theory I quite enjoy. However, there's other practical advantages to having an EMS over an MS outside of your eyes not darkening, and that is having a completed Susanoo. See, while it's never been explicitly stated that in order to get wings and legs to your Susanoo, you need EMS, the only people that we've ever seen with a completed Susanoo had EMS. Well, that's not necessarily true. Kakashi didn't have EMS. He had regular MS and he had a completed Susanoo. However, because people speculate that because Kakashi and Obito were like brothers, Kakashi receiving Obito's dual MS allowed him to awaken an EMS of sorts and therefore a full body Susanoo. But once again, just like with everything relating to the MS and Susanoo, Kakashi is a wrench in the works. People also bring up the valid point that Sasuke's 6-tome Rinnegan has been destroyed. However, when it comes to fusing MSs together to create an EMS, the state of the MS has never really seemed to matter all that much. Sasuke fused his eyes with Itachi's, and Itachi was basically blind at his death. Not to mention that Madara, when he eventually awoke his Rinnegan way later into his life, was able to cure an MS lost by the use of Izanagi by awakening said Rinnegan. Even when Madara switched back to his MS from his Rinnegan, that MS was healed. So the science or the magic behind fusing two MSs together is kind of hazy, and thus there's pretty much an equal possibility that Sarada is either able to take both of Sasuke's eyes or only one. There's really no way to know. But since we're talking about Sarada, let's talk about Sarada. She has the most theories revolving around her because of her awakening of MS in chapter 8. However, Sarada's political situation is just as curious as what her MS abilities will be. See, we know for 100% certainty that heading into the time skip, Sarada is a dual MS wielder. However, the circumstance of the awakening of her MS is weird. See, for as long as the Uchiha have existed, for somebody to awaken their MS, they've had to watch their best friend die. Well, actually, not even just watch their best friends die. They had to at least be partially responsible for the death of said best friend. Both Izuna and Madara had to kill their closest friends in order to awaken their MS. Shisui had to abandon his closest friend and teammate because he was jealous about the fact that he was stronger than him to awaken his MS. Itachi had to cut down a poisoned Shisui and cast him into a waterfall to awaken his MS. Sasuke had to kill Itachi, and so on and so forth. But Sarada is different. Not only did she not kill anybody, she didn't even feel partially responsible for anybody's death. Sarada awoke her MS because she was afraid that people were gonna go kill Boruto, and thus she awoke her MS while begging Sasuke to go and help Boruto. And thus, for the first time in the existence of the Uchiha, Sarada awoke her MS through love, which is actually kind of the standard for Sarada because she awoke her regular Sharingan after she saw Sasuke for the first time in a long time. But this isn't insane, because when Tobirama was describing how the Sharingan and MS work, he described it as the Uchiha needing a strong emotion to awaken their eyes. Now, because of the cycle of hatred and the fact that the Uchihas lived in perpetual warfare for thousands of years, this feeling was usually hatred, or despair, or something bad. However, because Sarada is technically the symbol of the end of the cycle of hatred, the rules don't really apply to her, and the awakening of her MS kind of corroborates that. And thus, people speculate that because Sarada was able to awaken her MS through love, that by using her MS, it won't actually darken her eyes, meaning that Sarada could spam her MS all day long and not go blind. However, that might not be the circumstance, and thus she would either need a healing factor like Obito or EMS, both of which are possibilities. We've already covered how she could get EMS, but how would she get a healing factor? Well, while a lot of people want Sarada to get the Byakuya seal like her mother in Tsunade, I don't think that's in the cards for her. In an anime-only episode, we saw that Sarada's chakra control isn't that great. It's definitely not good enough for medical ninjutsu. However, there is a workaround, and one would hope there would be a workaround when you consider the fact that half of Sarada's DNA comes from Sakura, arguably the greatest healer in Naruto history. And that workaround is Sarada's MS abilities. See, as we all know, an MS awakening is the reflection of the user's soul. That is to say that the abilities of the MS wielder are a reflection of how that person feels as they're awakening their MS. So when you consider how Sarada felt in the moment of the awakening of her MS, we can speculate what her abilities might be. And I've already done that actually. I have an entire video about it, but we'll go over it briefly. And before I go over her MS abilities, I want to quickly touch on Sarada Susanoo, which she will have. A Susanoo is also a reflection of the soul. That reflection comes in the color of the Susanoo and the weapons that the Susanoo wields. Well, I can't speculate on the weapons that Sarada Susanoo will have, I can speculate on the color. See, Susanoo's color depicts the amount of darkness in one's heart. This is why people like Itachi, Shisui, and Kakashi have incredibly bright Susanoos, while Madara and Sasuke have incredibly dark Susanoos. Considering the fact that Sarada was the first ever Uchiha to awaken an MS through love, I believe that her Susanoo will either be yellow or pink. I'm hoping with all of my might that it will be pink, but I understand not all ladies need pink things. But pink just happens to be my favorite color, and Sarada just happens to be my favorite Uchiha. But because she awoke her MS through love, there's no darkness in her heart, and therefore her Susanoo color would reflect that. Now, onto her MS abilities. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think I nailed this theory. Like, genuinely, if there's one of these theories that I think is gonna be 100% true, it's this one, because there are a lot of things that line up. See, as we all know, Kishimoto likes naming Sharingan abilities after Shinto deities. Izanagi, Izanami, Tsukiyomi, Kotobatsu Kame, Amaterasu, all Shinto deities. And since pretty much everybody in Sarada's bloodline has Amaterasu to some degree, with both Sasuke and Itachi having it, and probably Fugaku, I believe that Sarada will have some variant of Amaterasu. However, instead of black flames, hers will be yellow or gold. And the reason that Sarada's Amaterasu flames will be a different color is because instead of burning somebody until they turn to ash, Sarada's flames will heal. Because once again, Sarada awoke her MS through love, not hatred. It also seems relatively obvious that Sarada will have a flame-based MS ability because her MS shape is that of a sun. And thus I speculate that her flame-based ability will be something known as Ame no Uzume, the Shinto deity of dawn in revelry, who once in Shinto lore danced at the mouth of a cave that Amaterasu had tossed herself into to return the sun to the world. Because with Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, hiding in a cave, the worlds had been plunged into darkness, and thus Ame no Uzume became the goddess of revelry and dawn. And thus Ame no Uzume was the person who returned the sun to the earth. Kind of like how Sarada is trying to symbolically bring the sun back to the earth. Now these flames would stick to somebody's body and burn them until they were completely healed. They'd actually go one step further than just healing somebody's outside wounds, they would also cleanse the hatred in their heart. That is to say that much like the adamantite chains or the god deity gates, they would pacify the soul of the person burning. Now this is not only symbolic to the fact that Sarada is the person bringing the sun back to the world, but also ties into the fact that her mother is Sakura. And if Sarada doesn't have the chakra control necessary to be a medical ninjutsu specialist, she would be able to cover her lack in healing with her MS ability. Now this could also be a way that Sarada would be able to avoid EMS, as Sarada would be able to heal the damage done to her own MS with her MS ability, giving her hacks somewhat similar to Obito. And since Sarada is the symbolic impersonation of the end of the cycle of hatred of the Uchihas, her flames pacifying and healing people as opposed to burning them would be incredibly symbolic. Now, our other MS ability would be a Genjutsu ability, specifically a Genjutsu ability that counters the mind control ability of Ada. This ability wouldn't work like your standard Genjutsu, however. You wouldn't see a giant clam, you wouldn't think your bones were melting, you wouldn't get to live an entire life with Itachi before you died of old age. This Genjutsu, instead of creating a false reality, keys you in to Sarada's reality. That is to say that whatever objective beliefs in reality that Sarada currently believes, she's able to impose upon you. So in the circumstance of Ada's worldwide brainwashing, Sarada would be able to key people into Sarada's objective truth, which is a non-brainwashed reality. And that's important, and actually it might have been foreshadowed up to 9 years ago. See, in 2014, Naruto and Kishimoto released The Last, a movie where a singular Otsutsuki living on the moon is trying to throw the moon into the earth because they've strayed from Hagoromo's plan. However, prior to there only being one Otsutsuki on the moon, there used to be an entire clan. However, this clan was divided after Hamura's death, who created all of them, between people who believed they should intervene on Earth and people who believed they should leave Earth alone. And those two clans had flags, one of which was a sun and one of which was a moon, the symbols of which perfectly match Ada's Senrigan and Sarada's MS, possibly alluding to the fact that there would be a war between Sarada and Ada over the collective control of the entire world's objective grasp on reality. And people hypothesized that this ability would be referred to as Amoy Kane, who is the Shinto deity of wisdom. And considering the fact that Amoy Kane was the person tasked with finding a way to get Amaterasu out of the cage, it lines up pretty well with the idea. Outside of MS abilities, people are also curious about where Sarada will be. See, we've gotten a look at Sarada post Timeskip, but it doesn't give us a whole lot. I mean, her design is perfect, she looks sick as shit, but it doesn't give us a whole lot. What it does give us is that Sarada's wearing a huge black coat, eerily reminiscent of an Akatsuki clan. cloak. And in fact, as a whole, people have compared this new time skip look with that of Itachi. And considering the fact that Sarada has been curious about Itachi and Sasuke said that eventually he would tell her about Itachi, there's a possibility that Sarada has figured out what was going on with Itachi, and thus she's begun to adopt some of his mannerisms. But really what the curiosity boils down to with Sarada post-time skip is, will she be in Konoha or will she be with Boruto and Sasuke? See, here's the thing. Sarada is unaffected by Ada's charm Shinjutsu, and considering the fact that Sarada begged Sasuke to save Boruto, Ada can and probably will know that, as Ada is able to see anything between the present and the time that she was born anywhere on Earth, so there's no hiding any information from her. However, Ada is kind of an enigma. See, Ada, while she is obsessed with Kawaki and manifested her godlike ability to make whatever she wants reality when she came into contact with him and he wished he was Naruto's son, went to Boruto after she brainwashed the entirety of the world into believing that he killed Naruto and apologized, which leads a lot of people to believe that Ada actually may not be as obsessed with Kawaki as we believe. And there's a possibility that Ada may not actually end up on Kawaki's side when everything's all said and done. And thus, hypothetically, if Sarada remained within Konoha, there's a possibility that Ada would keep that secret from Kawaki, which opens the door slightly to Sarada in the possibilities realm, as Sarada could possibly have the option to remain within Konoha as a spy for Sasuke and Boruto. Something, once again, that Ada would let happen. And if you think about it, Ada not actively working with Kawaki kind of makes sense, because how would Boruto and Sasuke survive the time skip in the first place if Ada was just pointing out their location willy-nilly? Like I've said, Ada can see everything on Earth as it's going on, which means with next to no effort, she would be able to locate Sasuke and Boruto anywhere they went forever. So how doesn't Ada bring the entirety of Konoha and Kawaki to their location? Well, that's probably because she's not working with Kawaki. Now, the other possibility is obviously that Sarada is with Sasuke and Boruto, which wouldn't be insane. I mean, obviously she has to train in the usage of her MS, and who's better to help her do that than her father Sasuke? Not to mention, once again, that Ada most definitely saw her beg Sasuke to save Boruto, which has outed her as somebody not affected by her charm Shinjutsu, which Sarada was keeping on wraps from Ada. However, let's also not forget that Ada is desperately looking for people not affected by her charm Shinjutsu, and thus there's a possibility that Ada is so happy about the fact that Sarada isn't affected by her charm Shinjutsu that she does whatever she can to make sure that Sarada isn't hurt by Kawaki. As much in the same vein that Ada wants a boyfriend who isn't affected by her charm Shinjutsu, I'm sure she also wants friends who aren't affected by her charm Shinjutsu. And there are two women in Konoha specifically that we know are not affected by her charm Shinjutsu, Sumire and Sarada. So there's a possibility that Ada is covering for Sumire and Sarada, as she knows outing them as being unaffected by her Shinjutsu will probably lead them into conflict with Kawaki. But her location doesn't matter. She's going to be working with Sasuke and Boruto to take Kawaki down. Just a matter of whether or not she's working in cahoots with Ada, which I believe she probably will be. Which also, interestingly enough, also probably puts Daemon on the list of people helping Boruto and Sasuke, which also probably explains how Konoha gets destroyed in the first place. See, think about the scale of battle it would take to destroy a place like Konoha. There's only so many people who could participate in that battle. And I seriously doubt that a battle between Boruto and Kawaki would result in the destruction of Konoha, mostly because neither of them would want that. Both of them view Konoha as home, so why either of them would destroy Konoha in a battle, I don't know. And therefore I find it most likely that the people who destroyed Konoha were either Code or Daemon or Ada. But Ada's not really a combatant, so it really has to be either Daemon or Code. As to who they're battling, I can't really say for sure. But since we're talking about Daemon, let's talk about the person that Daemon is interested in. The only person that Daemon is interested in, Himawari. See, we didn't see Himawari in Chapter 80. However, that might be a good thing. See, one of the final panels of Chapter 80 shows Boruto stand across from everybody that he considered friends or family. Well, actually, just everybody he considered friends. On one side stands Boruto, while on the other side stand people like Kawaki and Mitsuki and Shikamaru and Sasuke and Amado. And this is meant to symbolize the people who have been affected by Ada's charm Shinjutsu, and therefore now technically see Boruto as a killer. However, there's one person who's not on that side, and that's Himawari. So we genuinely can't say whether or not Himawari has been affected by Ada's charm Shinjutsu. However, when you consider the fact the only other two people who resisted Ada's charm Shinjutsu are Sarada and Sumire, who did so because they love Boruto, there is a fair amount of possibility that Himawari has resisted Ada's charm Shinjutsu, and thus doesn't believe that Boruto killed Naruto. However, whether or not Himawari actually believes that Boruto killed Naruto isn't all that important, because whether or not she was brainwashed or not, she would still be living with Kawaki, who, along with the rest of the village, would tell her that Boruto killed Naruto. And as she is a young child, she'll probably believe these people, and thus Himawari will be thrust into a situation very similar to that of a young Sasuke, the daughter of a powerful family who loses both of her parents to her brother. So whether or not Himawari has been brainwashed, she will probably grow to hate Boruto. And thus Himawari will ironically probably follow a storyline very similar to that of Sasuke, where she'll enter the Shinobi Academy even though she was hesitant to do so prior in order to gain enough power to get revenge against the person who killed her family. And Himawari will go out looking for Boruto to get revenge. However, while going to look for Boruto in order to gain revenge, she'll either find him and battle him and the truth will be revealed to her, or somebody else will reveal the truth to her. That somebody else could be Sasuke, or possibly Sarada if I'm correct about her MS ability, as Sarada would be able to use her MS ability on Himawari in order to show her the objectively correct reality. On top of this, the reason that a lot of people speculate, mostly myself, that Daemon was interested in Himawari is because she'll probably awaken a Tensegon. See, Himawari is obviously the child of Naruto and Hinata, who have respectively acquired Hagoromo and Hamura's chakra. And what happens when you bring Hagoromo and Hamura together? You get Kaguya. Now, the reason that Boruto probably woke the Jogan in the first place is because of this. However, Himawari has something that Boruto doesn't. Byakugan. And that's important, because the only way that somebody can awaken a Tensegon is if they're an Otsutsuki who acquires a Hyuga Byakugan. And if we're going with the ideology that Hamura and Hagoromo's chakra coming together does create an Otsutsuki child of sort, Himawari awakening a Hyuga Byakugan means that those Hyuga Byakugan have the ability to transform into a Tensegon, which are more likely than not a Shinjutsu, which is why Daemon is interested in Himawari. And therefore Himawari going out on a revenge mission against Boruto is a big threat, and thus there is the possibility that she's the one who kills Sasuke, though more likely than not it'll be Kawaki, as Sasuke will probably die giving his life to protect Boruto, in kind of a full circle moment protecting the child of the man that he tried to kill so many times. But speaking of Kawaki, what will he be up to? This one's kind of the weirdest one, because I don't really know. The entire village believes that Kawaki is Boruto, and therefore that Kawaki is the son of Naruto, who's been killed by Boruto. And this time skip based off the character designs we've seen thus far is several years long, and thus I can't really imagine Kawaki doing anything but just being a regular ninja for a couple of years. Like, what else would he be getting into outside of possibly chasing after Boruto? He would keep living in Naruto's house, living a relatively normal life, plotting for Boruto's death, and probably forcing Ada to try and find him. But outside of that, I can't really imagine anything else. I mean, obviously he'll be working on his karma marking and probably getting closer to Ada. Who knows? They'll probably be dating after the time skip, which brings us to Ada, who will probably be dating Kawaki, but also regrets hurting Boruto. And obviously I've already speculated that she might actually end up helping Boruto. The fact that Kishimoto has already thrown two women at Boruto, Sumire and Sarada, is a bit weird. I mean, the only other person to attract two women simultaneously was Sasuke, with Ino and Sakura. And actually, I guess when you consider the fact that Boruto has a lot of similarities with Sasuke, him having two women interested in him kinda makes sense. But for some reason, I kinda have it in my head that Kishimoto's gonna try and build out this Boruto harem, which is like incredibly not like him. But the fact that Sumire and Sarada are already interested in him, and the fact that Ada very clearly regrets hurting Boruto and is only attracted to people unaffected by her Shinjutsu, makes me feel like Ada could at one point be attracted to Boruto, which I know feels like fanfic, but I can just see it going that way. Wait, Sasuke had three women attracted to him. Karin! Oh my god, this might be more than fanfic. But let's get to some more concrete footing here. We still haven't addressed the question, who's gonna be Hokage now that Naruto's not around? To which I believe it's a relatively simple answer. Well, it could be people like Shikamaru or Sakura. It's probably going to be Kakashi. It's kind of a situation like Hiruzen stepping back up as Hokage after Minato's death. Just makes the most sense. Kakashi's still young. He was literally just Hokage a couple of years ago. He's probably going to take over. Which leads us with one important character. Mitsuki. Now, Mitsuki's kind of in a weird spot, because for years people have theorized that the other half of Mitsuki that's not Orochimaru was Toneri. Mitsuki's Sage mode looks a lot like Toneri's Tensegon mode. He has the pale skin of an Otsutsuki, though that's also the pale skin of Orochimaru, and his mastery over Snake Sage mode when Orochimaru couldn't master it and he's a clone of Orochimaru was kind of weird. And thus people speculated, I included, that the other half of his DNA was Otsutsuki. However, that theory's been pretty much debunked, as very clearly Mitsuki was heavily affected by Ada's charm Shinjutsu, and if he was an Otsutsuki, he wouldn't have been. And thus in the time skip, Mitsuki will very much believe that Boruto killed Naruto. And considering how angry Mitsuki was in chapter 80, he will have probably mastered Snake Sage mode to take Boruto down. Not to mention that Mitsuki will have probably replaced Boruto with Kawaki as his best friend. And thus Kawaki will become his new son. And therefore, unless Mitsuki has his brain rewritten by Sarada, he'll probably be Kawaki's right-hand man. Just kind of bad for all involved when you consider the fact that he'll probably possibly be a perfect Snake Sage. And considering the fact that this time skip will absolutely be many years later, his body will be strong enough to support perfect Snake Sage mode. So not a bad guy to have on your team. And that's it. All the theories that I have for the future of Boruto. But what do you guys think? Do you think any of these theories could be a possibility? Do you think I just leaked the future of Boruto to you? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Gonna be honest, reminding you guys of half of these theories might be a bad idea for my credibility, but can't say I'm not honest.